evening, everyone. I will call this Bloomington City Council meeting to order. Tonight is Monday, August 4th, 2025. August already, I can't believe that. We will start our meeting as we always do. If you are able, please stand, remove any head covering, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you much to everyone who's joining us here in the council chambers tonight, and thanks to everybody who is watching online. We appreciate you having here with us this evening. Our first order of business this evening, council, is to approve tonight's agenda. And not a lot of items, but it's potentially a lengthy one. After our approval of the agenda, our introductory items include item 2.1, the introduction of new employees. And then I will read a proclamation for National Night Out, which is tomorrow evening. Item 3, our consent business. Councilmember Nelson has our consent business. It's 24 items tonight. So thank you for taking that on, Councilmember Nelson. Under hearings, resolutions, and ordinances, we have one public hearing, item 4.1, regarding prevailing wage ordinance amendments. Under item 5, our organizational business, we'll get an update on our Community Health and Wellness Center. It's at the 50% design development, and we'll get an update from our park staff and our consultants on that. Item 5.2 is our City Council policy and issue update, and then hopefully we'll adjourn before Tuesday. So there we go. Council, if there are no corrections or additions to tonight's agenda, I will move approval of the agenda as stated.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councilmember Lohman to approve tonight's agenda as stated. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And it's also the opportunity to mention that Councilmember Carter is not with us this evening. She's not feeling well. We will kick off our agenda with item 2.1, our introduction of new employees. Actually, it's been a while since we've done new employee introductions, so we've got a few people to introduce. We've got 3 different departments recommended. Who drew the short straw? Who's going first? I'm looking right at Dave Hansen, so we're going to go with Dave Hansen first.
Does that mean I won?
Yes.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce our newest hire in park maintenance. You may remember as part of implementing the new park maintenance and operations plan in 2024, the division was reorganized into work teams that include forestry, natural resources, turf maintenance, landscaping, playgrounds, athletic fields, and facilities. And this May, Bridget Goodwin here was hired to fill an open position in our facilities maintenance team in park maintenance. And so with that, I will turn it over to Bridget to tell you a little bit about herself.
Good evening, Bridget. Welcome.
Good evening. So I grew up in Bloomington, born and raised. I went to Poplar Bridge and Hillcrest Elementary, Olson Middle School, and Jefferson High School, and Normandale Community College. So I got all my education here in Bloomington. I previously worked as a PCA and wanted to do something new, so last year I decided to work in park maintenance as a seasonal employee and got to stick around during the winter. I worked at Herbeck during the summer, and during the winter I got to help with whatever people needed help with, and I got to help with sidewalk plowing and a lot of natural resource stuff too. And now I'm full-time working in park maintenance and facilities. And I'm enjoying it a lot.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you much for being here, and love to see your progress up through the Bloomington educational system and then through our City of Bloomington ranks. And welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got, I think, 2 new people in our IT department. Amy Cheney, you want to come up and say hello to them for us?
Where
Mary.
To do this in buddies.
Buddy system, yes. Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm pleased to introduce two new employees for our IT department this evening. First, we have Courtney Wickert. Courtney joined us on May 19th as our data governance specialist. She works within our data and records division, where she assists with records management by ensuring city records are accurately filed in our electronic record system, and provides support for data practices, including responding to data requests. Courtney most recently worked in the contract services for Texas Public Employees Association. She has been a loan officer for a mortgage company and worked for Chisago City as an associate planner. Courtney's attention to detail makes her an excellent addition to our team. Courtney holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in urban and regional studies. And in her free time, Courtney enjoys photography, mostly sports photography, fishing, and volunteering for her kids' sports programs. Welcome, Courtney. Would you like to say a few words?
Good evening, Courtney. Welcome.
Thank you so much. That's about me, I guess. I usually don't like to talk about myself, but that's it. I don't know.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks, Courtney. And next we have Morgan Knutson. She joined us as a business analyst on June 9th. In her role as business analyst, Morgan is responsible for identifying business needs within city departments and helps with the selection and implementation of technology systems with a goal of streamlining processes and increasing productivity among our employees. She has jumped right in, taking on lead for replacing systems like our learning management and occupational health management systems. Morgan most recently worked for Augsburg University as director of the Stroman Center, where she supported students for career readiness and worked collaboratively with to improve systems. She has also worked for the University of St. Thomas and the City of St. Paul. She holds a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's degree in public and nonprofit administration, and is pursuing her doctorate in education leadership. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her family and her dogs, and she also builds furniture and is an avid photographer.
Good grief. Wow.
That was a shocking one to me. I love it.
COVID hobbies.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. I'm so excited to be here. My first 2 months, Amy has put me through my paces and given me some really wonderful projects. One of which that she didn't mention is with replacing Rec Track as the new community and wellness center comes online. So big things all at once, but it has been fantastic to get to know Amy, get to know other employees around the city, and excited to learn more about what residents want from the city of Bloomington and how can we align that with what we're doing in IT.
Well, very good. Thank you both for being here tonight. You both have big jobs, so welcome. I appreciate the Rec Track and our Data Practices Act request. If you're getting those, God bless you, because I know that's a lot going on there as well. So welcome. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
And our final new employee, I'm going to turn it over to our city attorney, Melissa Manderscheid.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Is Laura on? All right, Mayor, while Laura is showing up, I know she's logged in. Do you want me to go ahead?
Great. Why don't you go ahead?
All right, while we're adjusting the settings here, I'll provide a little bit of background. So many of you may remember that a couple of years ago, probably a lot of years ago now at this point, we created the Office of Crime Victim Liaison in our city attorney's office to keep in mind sort of the scope of what we've got going on out of all the cases that we have in our caseload. In 2021, the city attorney's office opened 1,300 cases with victims. And just by 3 years later, in 2024, we opened more than 2,300 cases with victims. So of our total number of cases, that was about 1,000 more cases with victims in just a few short years. So thankfully, with those numbers, we asked the City Council to fund the hiring of a second crime victim liaison, and thankfully you all went with that. And so this position is invaluable in our process in that among other things that they do, they assist the victims with understanding and participating in the criminal justice process so that we can have better outcomes for the entire process, including the victims. So our newest hire is Laura. She joined the city attorney's office in May of this last year. And so please join me in welcoming Laura to the city. There's Laura's initials.
Good evening, Laura. Welcome.
All right. Laura has a bit of a commute, so I offered to allow her to call in. So
Understood.
we'll just move on if that's all right.
All right. Well, welcome, Laura.
We need to do the lunches.
Rice, chicken.
And
Are you there, Laura?
How many? 2 each?
yeah,
2 each?
2 each.
All right. Why don't we maybe just go on here and we'll. I do want to say to Morgan, to Courtney, to Bridget, and to Laura, welcome. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and thank you for being part of the Bloomington City staff. And as I tell all of our new employees, in a lot of ways, to many, many people, you are the face of Bloomington. It doesn't matter so much who sits up here, it's who works directly with residents and who provides the services for residents, and that is you. And it's a big responsibility, but we certainly know you're up to the task, and we expect a lot out of our employees in Bloomington, and we get a lot out of our employees in Bloomington. So welcome aboard. We're happy to have you on board, and look forward to seeing you out in the community working with our residents. So welcome. Next up on our agenda, Council, is a proclamation for National Night Out, and I'm going to head down to the podium. As I mentioned, as I was reading the agenda, tomorrow night is National Night Out here in Bloomington and across the country. It's the 42nd annual National Night Out. And so we always offer a proclamation, and then we make sure we get to the 300 some odd parties across the city. And it's always a fantastic time. And it's typically hotter than Hades, so to understand it's only going to be about 80 degrees tomorrow is, I think, a welcome relief on National Night Out. So this is our proclamation for National Night Out, Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch is sponsoring a unique nationwide crime and drug prevention program on August 5th, 2025 called National Night Out. And whereas the 42nd Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the Bloomington Police Department to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in a community-building campaign that promotes police-community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make neighborhoods a safer, better place to live. And whereas the Bloomington Fire Department and the Bloomington Crime Prevention Association play a vital role in assisting the Bloomington Police Department's efforts by supporting National Night Out 2025 locally. And whereas it is essential that all residents of Bloomington be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and the impact that their participation can have on reducing crime and drug abuse in our city and strengthening neighborhood spirit. And whereas the Bloomington Police Department values community partnerships by always being respectful while keeping our community safe. That respect is demonstrated through their compassionate and honest service. And whereas community partnerships, neighborhood safety and awareness, and communication are important themes of the National Night Out program. Now, therefore, I'm Tim Bussey, Mayor of the City of Bloomington, do hereby proclaim August 5th, 2025 as National Night Out in the City of Bloomington and urge all residents to join with their neighbors, fellow community members, and Bloomington Police and Fire Departments and the Bloomington Crime Prevention Association in making this community safer for everyone, dated this 4th day of August, 2025. Joined tonight by Deputy Chief Kim Clausen, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to Deputy Chief and let you make the final pitch and get people out to the National Night Out celebration tomorrow night.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and members of the community. We do want to say thank you to the fire department who helps us accomplish this huge task. It's hitting over 300 parties with multiple people in about 2 hours. So it's fast and furious, and it's a very good time. We look forward to it every year. As the mayor said, the weather has not always been our friend, but not at all. The last couple of years, we've been really happy, and so we're super excited about the forecast. We're grateful to the Crime Prevention Association that supports us financially through grants to be able to provide really good National Night Out parties and fun interaction with the police. This is the day that officers and fire trucks and ambulances show up outside your door, and you're not unhappy about that. So please welcome us with open arms. We can't wait to see you all.
Very good. Thank you so very much, and thanks for all that you do. Is everybody taking pictures? Thank you. Pardon? No, I do not. Next on our agenda is our consent business. Councilmember Nelson has the consent agenda tonight. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. Having just confirmed that none of my colleagues would like to hold any of these items, I will move items 3.1 through 3.24.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Nelson, second by Councilmember Mua to accept tonight's consent business as stated. No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Councilmember Nelson. Moving right along, item 4 on our agenda is our hearings, resolutions, and ordinances, and our only public hearing this evening is item 4.1, a public hearing regarding the prevailing wage ordinance amendments. Sarah Abe, our HRA administrator, will be leading us through this. Good evening and welcome.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and council members. I do have a presentation. Just give that a second. We also do have the public comment. We received some letters and other testimonies beforehand. Those should be in front of you now. And I have some additional copies here on the chair. Okay. Alrighty. As the mayor said, my name is Sarah, the HRA administrator here to present on this item tonight. Okay, so some quick background. I know you're all familiar. The Prevailing Wage Ordinance was adopted on June 17th, 2024, so just over a year ago, and it applies to projects in which the city, the HRA, or the port is providing funding, and the total project cost, regardless of the amount of city dollars invested in the project, is over $175,000. We did have an initial June 30th work session on some of these proposed changes. Staff have developed that into a framework and are presenting that before you tonight. Okay, this is a quick summary of the changes under consideration. We did propose a number of administrative amendments. This first one exempting housing projects under 8 units. So this is the federal Davis-Bacon exemption. It's also included in the City of St. Paul's ordinance, which our ordinance is based on. But it's not explicitly stated in our ordinance, which is why we felt it was important to clarify that language and make this administrative amendment. Same for the second one, to clarify pass-through and conduit bond funding is exempt. So these are cases where often the dollars don't necessarily even hit city accounts. The city is just acting as a pass-through or as an intermediary, and prevailing wage, the current ordinance is silent on this, and so again, another clarification. The third one is to authorize rulemaking, and so this is something the city has done before for our earned, sick, and safe time ordinance, and essentially gives some authority in terms of publishing rules around the administration of the ordinance that would allow us to clarify things and make the administration a little bit smoother. And then the other two changes are not administrative adjustments. They are much broader policy amendments. There are two here. One is to consider a waiver for specific projects under extreme situations. And the second is, instead of exempting only the 7 units or less that are already exempt under Davis-Bacon, to expand that exemption up to projects of 20 units or less. One of the pieces of feedback from the council at the June 30th work session was to build out what this criteria could look like. And so we have kind of this 2-step criteria, 2 steps conditions, or 2-pronged test. In this first one, the project would have to meet both of these conditions, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is also always true of any project receiving public assistance, but we felt important to state. And then it would have to demonstrate financial infeasibility. So the project is not able to go forward as currently laid out due to some of the challenges on the site. then it must also meet one of the following additional considerations. And you can see these three here. Either the previous development attempt on the site has failed, the site has been vacant for at least 5 years, which kind of addresses there's been multiple market cycles, and the site remains vacant, likely due to some condition on the site, and then that there is a unique hardship that can be demonstrated on that site. Another consideration that we were looking at is if the council were to consider some sort of waiver, what would that look like for projects that receive a waiver? What are things that we can do to prevent wage theft on that particular project? And so we've noted some contractual elements that we can include. So prevailing wage only applies when there is public assistance into a project, and so which means the city would have a contract with the entity doing the project. And so we could include some additional contractual controls here. We could request signed affidavits from anyone working on the site, developer, general contractor, subcontractors, require living wages for prevailing wage eligible roles. This is aimed to ensure that the lower wage workers are still receiving adequate compensation for their work. The ability to conduct random on-site or payroll audits. And then finally, the ability to basically promote or actively market opportunities for people to raise complaints with the city, potentially with a labor union contract, or to submit complaints to the state. So people are aware of their options if they feel that they're not getting paid appropriately. I won't spend too much time on this. This was the example that we used as an example of when this could be applied, but the action before the council tonight is not to grant a waiver for this project or any other. The action before the council is to consider adding the framework to the ordinance. Any project under consideration for a waiver would still not need to go through financial analysis from city staff, from our financial consultants, and so on to be able to demonstrate that they meet those other tests. Okay, and then stakeholder engagement. We did use the informed method in that we reached out and informed folks of the proposed language once we had developed it and put it together. We reached out to these folks listed on screen, anyone whose contact information we had in terms of developers, people who spoke at prevailing wage ordinance in the past, and then any contractors who had submitted their contact information and who had been completing a prevailing wage project in Bloomington were informed. The North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters also reached out to us, and we had a meeting with a couple of those representatives. We brought the proposal to the HRA import meetings and had discussions there. We also did the public hearing typical postings, which is putting the notice in the Sun Post, publishing on the web page, and then also adding a Let's Talk page. And here I'll note some of the feedback that we've received so far. I know there are a number of people here as well tonight to speak. So we got a kind of wide range of written feedback. So there was a Bloomington Southview LP, which is the owner of an apartment building here in Bloomington, asked the city to consider exemptions for rehab work and affordable projects. Hempel Real Estate proposed that the conversion of existing buildings to residential uses can be considered a hardship. Neither of these are under consideration at this time. There was a comment on Let's Talk Bloomington in supporting the proposed changes to make it easier to build in the city. And then we received a couple of written letters, one from North Star Policy Action and one from the Laborers International Union of North America, which you should have printed in front of you now. Okay, and then we get to next steps, which is your typical ordinance approval process. If the council moves forward with approving any of these amendments, the ordinance changes would be posted in the Sun Current and then would be effective 10 days after posting. And then if there were occasion for a waiver, that would be considered during the typical development process as almost like another form of subsidy. So it would have to be evaluated case by case. All right, that is it for my presentation. Oh, I'll actually note, so we did say that there were a number of administrative changes proposed and then a couple of policy changes. If the council wanted to move forward and approve the administrative changes but strike anything else from the amendment, then you could do so using the following language, which would basically be to motion to move forward with those changes, but you could exempt these provisions that are added for these policy recommendations. And that is it for my presentation. I'm not sure if it's questions or public comment next.
We will take questions from the council, and the council, I'll remind you, we'll ask questions now, and we'll get into the discussion after the public hearing. Any questions of Ms. Abe this evening? Councilmember Lohman.
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't have the opportunity to attend the June 30th meeting. I was ill during that evening, like my colleague is tonight. So then, could you talk a little bit more about? I know that we basically understand what the inform means method of. But could you talk a little bit more about what that means and how you kind of decided? Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure, Mayor and council members. So there are different methods of consulting, essentially, and it kind of goes on a spectrum in terms of inform is just letting people know, and as opposed to like on the other end of the spectrum, you have a lot of conversations and meetings and discussions and things like that. And so in this case, we felt that the recommendations were primarily administrative and also left the bulk of the ordinance intact in that it wasn't changing the fundamental pieces of the ordinance. The policy changes, like the waiver, would still have to have additional approvals, and then the waiver would still have to have additional approvals. So that was why we chose that method. It was just basically communicating out to interested stakeholders that we were having this discussion in front of the council tonight, so people could still come and give their comments at a public hearing.
Okay, just a couple more questions. So then, in terms of how this, all of these recommendations, it sounds like there's four basic recommendations. They came due to what has taken place over the last year, and some information had been sent from those who are dealing with the policy to bring it here, and that's when we had that conversation. Am I correct on that?
Yes, Mayor and Council members, that is correct.
The other question I had, I know that our model for our ordinance is the St. Paul model. I was curious, are there rulemaking capabilities in that St. Paul ordinance, if that's our model? Do they have that?
Yeah, Chair and council members. The St. Paul ordinance does not explicitly include rulemaking in their ordinance. They do publish an administrative manual, which is kind of what that gives us the ability to do, but it has a little bit more formal backing by the city if rulemaking is authorized. And actually, at least the staff in the city of St. Paul did recommend that this would be a good change to the ordinance because it just allows us a little bit more, authority to do to administer some of those things that are published.
Just so I'm clear, that is not currently in the St. Paul, okay? Correct. And then the administrative guide, how is that administered as a process? How is that done in St. Paul? Are you aware of that? Can you talk a little bit about that? And how is that different than what we currently have today?
Yeah, sure.
Ms. Manderscheid, could you help on this one?
Sure, Mayor, members. So as mentioned a couple of times, the City of St. Paul has a long-standing prevailing wage program. And one of the things that we heard early on from the council more than last year, so I suppose about 18 months ago, was that we wanted to have a system that was familiar to the people and the parties that were working in it. And so as much as we could make the experience the same in the other cities that had prevailing wage, we wanted to do that as much as possible in Bloomington. So when we have questions and about how things are operated and how they are administered, we often reach out to St. Paul. They have a manual, and then they have a lot of experience. And so there have been a couple of times where we saw opportunities to offer some administrative clarifications in our own system. And so we've been posting those on our website as sort of FAQs and keeping track of them so that we give consistent answers whenever we get a question. So when this opportunity came up to do a little bit of tweaking administratively to the ordinance, one of the things that we mentioned in the city attorney's office is it would be great to have administrative rulemaking because we found a lot of success in using that strategy with earn sick and save time. So you could put everything together, everyone gets notice when you have rules, and then everyone can find their answers more quickly and they don't have to wait to talk to somebody during the day. So that is one of the reasons we put it here. So we don't have a manual per se, and we don't have rules per se, but we would look to develop those in a very holistic way and make them and publish them. One of the things that the ordinance says is that the rules would not be effective until 30 days after publication, so that there wouldn't be a surprise to anybody, any payroll that needed to be adjusted, any POS programs or whatever they are, or not POS, payroll systems, they would have time to be adjusted so that they could comply and also offer the opportunity for any questions to be resolved. So that's what is in the written ordinance with regard to rulemaking.
Thank you for clarifying. I just got two more questions quickly, Mayor. I know we've got a lot on the agenda here. In terms of the Davis-Bacon portion of it, that was left out of our ordinance. But isn't it true that it's possible for us to create, and other cities across the country can create ways in which to look to administer a prevailing wage at that lower level, the 8 and below, because the federal and the state are exempted from that?
Can you maybe clarify your question? So sorry.
Yeah, so my understanding is,
Yeah.
just from the literature that I've been able to research and look over, is that, the federal has that Davis-Bacon Act, and that there's an exemption
Yeah.
there. A lot of cities go out of their way to go ahead and make their own rules for those properties that are 8 and below, because it allows them to be more specific in terms of how they want to administer those rules as it relates to those that are under that 8. And so that they allows, it's not an exemption part. It's like, okay, well, the federal government is exempted from that, but that allows then the cities to come up with their own ways in which they want to introduce a prevailing wage. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that is a possibility, that we could do that route as opposed to just making those properties below 8 exempt.
Yes, Mayor and council members, I think you'll find a very wide variation in terms of how cities manage that. So in our case, our current ordinance applies much more broadly than the Davis-Bacon exemptions. You'll find some cities that like Minneapolis has a very complex structure in terms of what projects are exempt and what are not. Some of that may align with Davis-Bacon, some may not. St. Paul follows this Davis-Bacon exemption kind of framework. So I think you'll find a very wide variance in terms of how cities have chosen to implement their rules. So I think the short answer is yes.
And so let me just ask a follow-up on that one then. So then if that's possible, is there a way to get at some of these concerns that my fellow council members have in terms of the administrative concerns for small businesses at that level by, creating your own exemption from, the 20 all the way down to the 8?
Yes, if I'm
Okay, thanks.
understanding
That's
correctly,
all
yes.
right. One last question here. We got to keep
Yeah.
moving here.
Yep.
So then, in terms of the question in terms of the exemption that is the our example that we're using here, what evidence was submitted to staff to substantiate those claims? And does staff stand behind that claim that this is a good example from an evidence standpoint, that this would make for a good example of an exemption? I know we now have the exemption rules before us, that there isn't any other way in which that we could deal with those particular issues that were brought forward.
I'm so sorry. One more time. Could you just repeat the question?
Yeah,
for me?
see if I can make it a little simpler here. So obviously, this is the example that we wanted it from a policy perspective to bring forth exemption.
So you're talking specifically around the waiver, the
Around
example
the
site that
waiver,
we've
yeah.
used there.
So
Okay.
what evidence has staff seen
Yeah.
that substantiates that this is a problem and there isn't any other way other than exempting a prevailing wage?
Yeah. So, I think, so the way it's framed tonight is that it's not a decision on this particular waiver.
No, I
so-
totally get that. I
Yeah.
totally get that, but that's the rationale. My understanding
Yes.
was that was the rationale as to why this is before this body. And I just
Yes.
want to make sure I understand what's the evidence, because we're only using one example. Now, if there's lots of other examples, please, tell me about them.
Yep.
Councilmember Lohman, Mayor, council members, Kevin Canase with the Port Authority here. So I've had conversations with the developer. They have submitted their pro forma, which we've reviewed. So we've looked at the project cost as well as estimates for the soil remediation for the property. So the waiver would be based on that, as well as the conditions of the site that would likely prevent development under kind of reasonable economic conditions to happen, given that those conditions exist.
And typically you do that with a TIF, right?
Correct. So
And so you're saying that it's even above and beyond the TIF?
the analysis that we've done shows that it may be developable if we were to apply TIF to the property or use TIF to subsidize the redevelopment of the property through a soils correction TIF district.
Sure.
And
There are
so-
other instruments and tools that could be sought after beyond the TIF to mitigate that, right?
Councilmember Lohman, that's correct. So we've been.
That's all I need. Thank you. We can move on with the meeting. Thanks.
Councilmember Rivas and Councilmember D'Alessandro. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Rivas.
It's just a quick question, I promise. Can you provide any examples of similar projects in comparable cities where prevailing wage compliance was waived, and what the long-term impacts were, both positive or negative?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, I don't believe there is a city that has a similar waiver provision other than, but there are examples of cities that have similar exemptions. So that would be along the lines of the administrative small project exemptions. But I don't believe there's an example of a similar waiver.
Can you name some of the cities, if you don't mind?
Yes, St. Paul has a similar, I know we've referenced that one a lot. I know that Minneapolis includes exemptions for these smaller projects. A number of different ordinances are framed a little bit differently, so they don't always apply to smaller projects, but it is fairly common for single-family projects to be exempt from these ordinances.
Council, additional questions? All right, seeing none. This is a public hearing, and we'll open our public hearing on item 4.1 regarding our prevailing wage ordinance amendments. I know a number of you have already signed in, and we can just queue up and go through it. What I would like to do, just a couple of ground rules here. We limit our public hearing comments to 5 minutes, and I will cut you off at 5 minutes. Not because I'm a jerk, but because we're trying to make sure everybody has the same amount of time. To keep you on track, we do have the shot clock up on the wall, and you'll be able to keep track and see what that is and follow how far you are into your comments. If you ask questions, what we'll do is just jot questions down, and we will answer them at the end of the public hearing. And rather than trying to shoot from the hip and answer questions, we will answer them at the end of the hearing. And everybody will get an opportunity here, and we'll get through everybody who would like to make comments, and then we will turn it over to the council for our comments. So as you start, like any public hearing, if you could please identify yourself, and then you don't have to sign in as you're standing there. You could take the clipboard back with you and just get signed in. So very good.
Awesome.
We're underway.
Well, good evening, Mayor Bussey and council members. My name is Lucas Franco, and I'm the research manager for LaUna, Minnesota, and North Dakota. We're a construction union representing 14,000 workers, including over 100 here in Bloomington. First, I want to thank you all and city staff for leadership and advancing important wage theft prevention legislation last year. I appreciate being part of a really thoughtful process to understand the challenges of worker exploitation and unfair competition in multifamily housing, and to work on clear solutions. And I think your decisive leadership in advancing prevailing wage standards was very encouraging and appreciated. Second, thank you all for the collective effort to build critically needed affordable housing. Too many Minnesotans are housing cost burden, including roughly 25% of Bloomington residents, according to the All Things Housing report. Many families, including many of our members, struggle to find affordable housing. In reviewing the data, it's clear Bloomington has made immense strides in prioritizing housing development, and it's developed thousands of new units in recent years. And we share, as LaUna, your commitment to new housing development and are eager to support your efforts to get this done. We've worked hard as an organization at the local and state level to support housing production by advocating for housing infrastructure bonds, brownfield cleanup grants, revolving loan funds for county CDAs, zoning reforms, and much more to try to increase our supply of housing. But fundamentally, we can't try to solve our housing crisis on the backs of vulnerable workers, and this is what this is all about. The construction industry faces rampant wage theft and tax fraud. Nearly a quarter of workers are misclassified or paid off the books. Developers cutting costs, often with illicit contractors, ends up undercutting the market and hurting everyone, both contractors that play by the rules and workers. And the prevailing wage ordinance in place is a really important step to stop that. But we're now facing a situation in which a developer with a concerning track record, as you'll hear later, has come forward to the city seeking an exemption. They're claiming they need this exemption based on really outlandish claims about their ability to cut labor costs by potentially 20%. There's no evidence that this can be done, in our opinion, without very draconian cuts to wages and likely completely slashing any benefits. I understand the profound desire to build more housing and the challenges that come with hard-to-develop sites, but we can't sacrifice fair worker treatment and wages in our drive to do whatever it takes to build new housing. When a developer demands lower labor standards or threatens to walk away, that's not negotiating. In our opinion, that's extortion. Cities should never be forced to choose between decent wages and economic development. Bloomington should hold firm to its commitment to build publicly subsidized projects the right way and maintain prevailing wage protections that uphold the city's values. Third, we're also deeply concerned about the policy changes themselves. We see there's no clear process for evaluating exemption requests, including what data justifying exemption will be made public. There's no analysis we're aware of how many projects could potentially qualify in terms of sites. There also seems to be confusion around whether a phased exemption would apply to remediation or the entire project. And finally, the 20-unit exemption is out of step with both federal and recently established state precedent around the LIHTC policy when it comes to unit exemption sizes. So it seems quite random to us. And all of these components raise fundamental red flags about the policy itself. Fourth, I also want to share frustration about how the process has unfolded. I greatly appreciate staff engagement recently, but there's been insufficient engagement from the beginning, no proactive outreach to us before 6 days ago, despite being one of the first parties engaged last year. So this totally came out of the blue. We first heard about it from a reporter, actually. And in conclusion, I ask that at a minimum, you table the proposal to give community groups such as ourselves more time to weigh in and staff more time to resolve ambiguities and gaps in the proposal. It would be much better, however, to simply reject the deeply flawed policy proposal. We know we need to develop more housing, and we're committed to addressing development challenges, but please don't grant exemptions that pit new development against just labor standards. There's better ways to develop challenging sites than opening the door to slashing fair wages and benefits. Thank you so much for your work on this issue and for your time.
Thank you. And apologies for our shot clock not working, but you still made it under 5. Well done. And so, yep, absolutely. Well done. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Jake Schweitzer. I'm the Executive Director of North Star Policy Action. We're a think tank that promotes data-driven solutions to help working Minnesotans thrive. Last year, I testified at the meeting where you passed the Prevailing Wage Ordinance, and I'd like to just remind you all of the scale of the problem that you were addressing at that time. Worker abuse in the construction industry is disturbingly common. A study by the Midwest Economic Policy Institute estimates that 310,000 construction workers are illegally misclassified as independent contractors or paid off the books, making up 23% of the construction workforce in the state. And last year, I testified about our own research. We identified publicly subsidized housing developments that employed contractors with a history of abusing workers. And in total, we identified over $84 million in tax increment financing and low-income housing tax credit subsidies that have gone to projects employing contractors with proven or alleged labor violations. At an even earlier meeting, this council heard from Loopy Development, Franna Companies, and Frida Drywall. These are companies that pay prevailing wages and treat their workers fairly while building the affordable housing that our communities need. And they told you that they're struggling to compete in this market against companies that are allowed to drive down their costs by exploiting workers. Policies like the ordinance you passed last year level the playing field and allow legitimate builders to compete in a fair market. These builders also told you that prevailing wage requirements do little to increase the cost of housing construction so long as you're comparing legitimate builders with legitimate builders. They told you that claims of prevailing wage increasing project costs only happen when comparing legitimate builders to those who misclassify and mistreat their workers. Now, we're making progress to create a market where legitimate builders can thrive while crowding out criminal behavior. The state legislature added prevailing wage requirements to the low-income housing tax credit program, and thanks to you all, Bloomington joined the growing number of cities across the metro area adding prevailing wage to city-funded projects. Now, this year, the federal government is turning back progress, abandoning working people in favor of moneyed interests. I urge you to resist a similar turn and instead stay true to the Bloomington that you said that you were last year, one that stands for good jobs with family-sustaining wages and good benefits. It's your responsibility to protect the integrity of public funds in Bloomington, to protect workers and uphold the law, and to create a marketplace in your city that allows legitimate businesses to compete. The prevailing wage policy that you passed a year ago is the best tool we have to accomplish these goals. So I urge you to oppose any exemptions to that policy and stand with working people in your city. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. I appreciate the love you're sharing there, folks, but I do want to say within the council chambers, we do not like to applaud just because there may be somebody that you disagree with, and we then wouldn't want a booing contest to go on either. So if we could just respect the process here, and if we could refrain from applause, I would greatly appreciate it. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair and council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Woodrow Piner. I'm a business representative with the North Central States Regional Council of Carpenters, and I've been on staff for 10 years. One of my roles with the NCSRCC is working on the tax fraud team, which is a unit that uncovers workers being exploited on construction projects, which is unfortunately the reason I'm here tonight. Enclave is seeking an exemption from prevailing wage language, which was recently adopted by the city in regards to TIF finance projects. History lessons with Enclave's choices of subcontractors they have hired on the Twin Cities projects tells a story that sounds a bit different than soil remediation cost worries inflating a project cost to not be feasible. Since entering the market prior to 2020, Enclave has had a history of hiring subcontractors on unlicensed scopes of work who have a publicly checkered past, soliciting impossible low numbers if they are operating above the board. Subcontractors operating on Enclave projects provide below-the-board numbers, paying workers off the books, misclassification, not paying overtime, and not providing workers compensation that protects workers from job site accidents. In the spring of 2021, Enclave asked the city of Brooklyn Park for $2.4 million in TIF for a 146-unit apartment project. Testimony was given by various individuals at a city council meeting in regards to subcontractors Enclave had hired on their Twin Cities projects. The city tabled the matter and eventually rejected the TIF request, not confident that Enclave would protect workers on the backs of city money. Following the testimony and prior to the TIF rejection, a representative from Enclave said in a statement provided to the Hometown Source publication that Enclave had made significant changes to its practices following accusations against its subcontractors, trying to provide a guardrail that this would never happen again. I guess it wasn't enough. They continued to hire the same subs. Although Enclave lost the TIF, the project shrunk in size and moved on. Despite being warned about Wolf Construction and the lower tier subcontractors that perform the wood frame work underneath their supervision, Enclave again hired them for the Brooklyn Park project. In April of 2023, Nelson Lopez was charged with workman's comp premium insurance fraud by Hennepin County, and coincidentally, Lopez and his company had performed most of the wood framing directly underneath the supervision of Wolf on that Brooklyn Park project. The Star and Tribune, in fact, named the Brooklyn Park project in a story about the charges in which Lopez would eventually plead guilty. That project would be the springboard for Brooklyn Park adopting prevailing wage on their TIF money approximately a month before this city did it. This would not be the first or the last time Enclave would hire a subcontractor who is either under investigation or had already had public documentation depicting illegal practices laying the groundwork for worker exploitation. On a project in neighboring Richfield, Enclave hired Absolute Drywall Incorporated. Absolute, prior to being hired on this project, had state and federal findings including misclassification, unpaid overtime, and child labor violations. Most recently, in March of this year, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights and Attorney General's office filed a civil lawsuit against Absolute Drywall for sex discrimination and retaliation for firing a female worker after she reported sexual harassment and rape on the job. These are examples of publicly documented subcontractors hired by Enclave. There are other subcontractors who are currently working on or recently performed work on Enclave projects who have had workers come into our office and give statements, the same stories of working directly underneath the supervision of these subcontractors, being paid in cash, not being paid overtime, not being paid earned and sick and safe time, and not being covered underneath a work comp policy. None of the subcontractors mentioned in this testimony have worked on prevailing wage projects, even though both union and non-union subcontractors are welcome to bid on these projects. This and the fact that Enclave is here trying to carve out exemptions tells us that prevailing wage works. Prevailing wage was built to prevent contractors or developers like Enclave for sucking off public resources and exploiting workers. Prevailing wage was built for that, and it works. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. I'll start with some good news. I was expecting 2 minutes, so I'll be done in well under 5. I'm Aaron Rosenthal. I'm the Research Director with North Star Policy Action, a think tank dedicated to improving the lives of working Minnesotans. As a Research Director, I'm here to give the nerdy testimony. I want to focus on one specific point in this debate, the impact of prevailing wage on construction costs. In a letter submitted to this council for the June 30 meeting, Enclave Construction claimed that paying prevailing wage would lead to a 20% increase in construction costs on the 3901 Minnesota Drive project. That claim fails in at least 2 ways that exemplify why the prevailing wage ordinance should remain as is. First, it goes against a body of scholarly research demonstrating that prevailing wage has little to no impact on construction costs. When one actor with a significant financial interest makes a claim that directly contradicts a large number of peer-reviewed, rigorous studies, it should raise some questions. To the extent that existing research has found prevailing wage increases costs, the upper limit has been around 6%, not 20%. Moreover, this modest impact has been linked back to widespread labor exploitation, illegally driving down labor costs, further underscoring why prevailing wage is needed in the first place. That brings me to my second point. I ran an analysis, which you have in the written testimony, and found that Enclave's claim of prevailing wage driving a 20% increase in construction costs could only happen if many workers were initially to be paid $10.20 per hour in wages, along with $6.47 in fringe benefits. I do not believe it is a mistake that this wage estimate is below the state's minimum wage, but rather points towards an important truth. To claim a 20% construction hike is to suggest many workers will experience wage theft in the absence of a prevailing wage. Unfortunately, unlike the 20% argument, that claim does align with a historical record, as you just heard, where we've seen Enclave utilize subcontractors engaging in illegal worker exploitation. Put simply, Enclave's 20% construction cost increase claim doesn't align with the research and points toward illegally low pay. Because Bloomington's prevailing wage ordinance was designed to prevent exactly this kind of worker exploitation, it is particularly important that the ordinance be kept in place as it is currently written. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I also do not intend to take the full 5 minutes. My name is Tim Watkins. I'm a compliance investigator with the Fair Contracting Foundation. We are a nonprofit labor management committee, so we are jointly trusteed and funded by Minnesota's building trades unions as well as their signatory contractors. We are here speaking on behalf of the 70,000 men and women in Minnesota's building trades as well as more than 2,000 signatory contractors. We are created to serve as a compliance monitor, primarily focusing on prevailing wage, but over the years that portfolio has expanded to include issues like wage theft, payroll fraud, independent contractor misclassification, and the like. I just want to talk with you very briefly about why prevailing wage was created in the first place and how the city's currently existing ordinance dovetails very nicely with that original intent. Typically, people think of prevailing wage and they think of Davis-Bacon, which was passed in 1931. But really, prevailing wage's history goes back a lot further than that. It was first created in 1891 in the state of Kansas, and before Davis-Bacon was adopted during the Great Depression, 5 other states had passed some version of prevailing wage. So this policy really is the result of kind of the laboratories of democracy doing what they do, where we get to test out policy and see how well it works before scaling it up, and in some cases scaling it down to the local level. And when prevailing wage was first passed, it was part of a suite of worker protections that not only about establishing local wage standards, but also including restrictions on the use of convict labor and child labor in the construction industry in the state of Kansas. From its inception, it was seen as a way to protect workers from being exploited by unscrupulous businesses, as well as to protect those businesses that try to do things legitimately, and that are, as you've heard already this evening, that are constantly experiencing pressure from companies that are doing things illegitimately that make it very difficult for them to transact business. And so that's what I just would urge council to consider retaining the policy in its current form, because I think that the version that was passed last year really does keep to that original spirit of prevailing wage, which is again about protecting workers while also making it possible for legitimate businesses that do things right, that pay taxes, that have insurance to cover all of their workers in the event of injury and whatnot, to be able to remain competitive. And I do also just want to talk very briefly. I know that there have been just some questions about just how prevailing wage rates are established when we say that they're based on area standards. In Minnesota, that is done via a survey that is available to all contractors, from the tiniest little sole proprietorships up to the enormous general contractors. The Department of Labor and Industry sends that request out to everybody who's been doing work in the state and just asks them for a couple basic pieces of info. What type of work were you doing? Where was it being done? And what were you paying your workers? And then they take all of that information and on a county by county basis, they go through and assess which was the rate that occurred most frequently. So again, trying to assess what are the wage rates and benefit packages that contractors are paying most frequently. In statistical terms, this is referred to as the mode. And so if council would like, we'd be more than happy to provide excuse me, full data on the most recent survey results that were just published in December of last year. If you would like to see, the rates for carpentry and cement and roofing and whatever else for Hennepin County and how many surveys were submitted, we'd be more than happy to provide all of that. It would require a little bit of number crunching, but if anybody is curious about where those numbers came from and how those rates get set and whether they are representative of work that's being done, I can assure you it definitely is, and we'd be more than happy to provide that. I just didn't want to bring up a bunch of spreadsheets tonight. But again, I just would urge council, please strongly consider rejecting this process to grant waivers to projects because that, in our view, is subverting the original intent of prevailing wage 130 years ago and subverts the intent of the policy that was passed last year. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Chelsea Globitz-Gabio, and I'm the president at the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation of the AFL-CIO, and we represent unions and workers all throughout Minneapolis and the suburban communities around the West Metro all the way up to Anoka County. And you've heard a lot from construction tonight, but I do want to put a finer point on that. The idea of community benefits, which prevailing wage is a piece of that, is actually seeing an expansion throughout our state and throughout our local communities. So not only is this going to be setting a significant precedent within a very specific lane of work, it could also hold things back. We're seeing an expansion in protections for workers and environmental protections and hospitality, security, janitorial, and here in Bloomington, a big one is manufacturing. So this is like going to have implications beyond just the very specific pieces of information that you're hearing about tonight. We appreciate being a partner with Bloomington and all of its development activities, its amazing record on affordable housing, and especially when we have these really big projects that need to come to fruition. Workers are always going to be the first one at the table to help get that to the finish line. And we do feel like after the robust engagement we had over the last 2 years, that this does come at in a way that we haven't worked with Bloomington in the past. So there are some real policy process concerns in addition to a lot of the policy elements that you've heard here tonight. So we do believe that it's best to vote against this policy and that there's better ways to get to that alignment. We did hear quite a bit from the staff about seeking alignment. We have the experts in the room who are thinking about the best ways to get more and more alignment, because as the state and local communities are the final backstop for this type of work right now in this current environment, we also are seeking alignment and the best of the best from every region, and we can help deliver that alignment. Please include us in the process, and please keep your current policy as is.
Thank you. Others? Please.
Evening, Mayor Bussey. It's been a while.
Good evening. Welcome.
My name is Amber Mathwig. I'm a proud unionized worker with Teamsters Local 638 and generally a proud resident of Bloomington since 2020. Little appalled that I even have to come here tonight, but if it's on the agenda, somebody's trying to make it happen. I really appreciate all the union advocates and labor advocates here tonight giving you facts. I'm here with feelings. I may not be in construction trade, but I am a laborer struggling under the increased weight of maintaining the most basic needs of my home while also paying increasing property taxes to this city every year. all other essential needs that cost money so that I can survive to go to work another day again and again. First of all, I'm not sure how I am on every Bloomington notice listserv that exists, maybe not the cops, but every other one, but I was not aware of this issue until the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation posted about it on Friday. I get plenty of postcards inviting me, a resident, to give comment on all sorts of issues. Not this one. I come to the farmers market almost every Saturday. Don't see anything about this. How are we actually ensuring that this information, asking residents to participate, is getting to residents? What is the participation rate? That is my question for that point. My notes are a little scratchy since I had to do this on the way here. Give me a second. What's my time? I got plenty of time. The example projects that I was able to look at for a few minutes looks like we're trying to pass the failures of the city and the failures of the contractors of previous events onto the workers by underpaying them. If we are allowed to underpay them, then we are asking that they not be able to live their lives as well as others. Prevailing wages are at best an assumption that it is presumed to be a combination of a living wage, of their skill, and their time in their service. Do you want people to be able to afford to live here? Should the contractors be allowed to not honor the time and skills of their laborers and their workers? A prevailing wage isn't the ordinance that needs to be changed at this point, is what it's sounding like. The ordinance that needs to be changed is that we're required to accept the lowest bidder without any consideration of their history of worker exploitation. I've been pretty proud to live here for the last 5 years. Like, we do really great things. I drive around the city and I'm just like, I love this place. Things are getting better. And I want to be able to keep saying that. So in the words of Henry Ness, a murdered Minneapolis worker in 1934 on strike by the police and the capitalist forces that wanted nothing more than to underpay their laborers, please don't let me down now, boys and ladies.
Thank you. Others? Priyanka, do we have anyone on the phone wishing to speak to this issue tonight?
Mayor, we do not have anyone online.
Last call for anybody in the council chambers? Last call always gets them.
Mayor,
good evening,
council.
Welcome.
As some of you know, I do work for the city of Bloomington.
Could you please identify yourself just so we have you on the record?
My name's Dean McNeil, and I work for the city of Bloomington as a time of sale representative and evaluator. And just to make an example of what I ran into today, to have unlicensed workers or not qualified workers, I came to a house today and I went around it and I was like, wow, that furnace flue is totally closed off by the cap. So I went inside and I told the guy that had bought the house, and he's like, we went down to the water heater and sure enough there's a red tag there from 2019. Nobody noticed in 6 years that there's carbon monoxide going into that house. They had a new furnace put in. Nobody noticed. It was never fixed. It was just sitting there. So I walked him out and I'm like, it's a 5-minute fix. I mean, I started in the trades in roofing when I was like 14 in summers. So it stands out to me if something like that easy to be fixed is there. I just wanted to bring that up and thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for catching that. Time of sale program works. And now this is last call for anybody. Anyone? Council, no one on the phone wishing to speak. We've got no one in the council coming forward. I would look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lohman, second by Councilmember Rivas to close the public hearing on item 4.1. No further council discussion on this. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0, closing the public hearing. Council, thoughts, questions? I see hands already. Councilmember D'Alessandro, Councilmember Lohman. Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think I probably over the weekend I've done, as you might imagine, some math, some data work. Thanks for the offer to the gentleman who asked if we could get some, or if we wanted spreadsheets or anything, but I already got them off the website and I did some math. You know, when I think about the way that we're talking about, first off, prevailing wage makes it sound like it's more than what you should pay potentially, right? And last year when we were having this debate, I was really confused about the way that the wages were calculated, right? And I remember when I voted for this ordinance, I actually maybe admonished a little bit, but certainly encouraged the people in the construction community who are actual contractors and to submit their wages, because to the point that was made earlier, you can influence the price that this prevailing wage is by submitting your information and telling us what you're paying people, because that is how it works. And in fact, the more information they get, because it is mode here as opposed to median, the most entered one is the one that wins. It's not necessarily the highest or the lowest. It's just the one that's done most often. And so I could argue that's not right. That doesn't matter. It's not. We don't do that work. But doing the math, then, if you do take the average of all of the numbers that are on that labor sheet, $73.37 an hour. In Minnesota, you probably get 1,600 construction hours in a year because of snow and winter and weather and everything like that. If you do the math on that number, $1,650 being an average or whatever, it comes out to like $121,000 a year, which is right in line with our AMI, our average median income. And so it feels uncomfortable for me to be talking about not paying people average salaries. It really does. And so on the first point, where it is like, if I'm looking at the test for whether or not I want to agree to these accommodations, I'm going to say we're not paying too much by doing this because we're paying an average income, and that seems right for people who work in our city, right in alignment. Secondly, I feel like my second concern was that the language that we have doesn't allow for us to have a clarity around the way that you go about getting an exemption. What are the specific criteria? And you see evidence of that slippery slope that I was concerned about, where I asked even the question around the legal concerns around that, when you see already in our notes just today, 2 more people saying, well, what about if we do it this way? And what about if we do it that way? And so you're already seeing, not just this one exemption type, but any exemption type, and maybe all of the exemption types, to the point where it loses all of its teeth whatsoever. So on my second count, my second reason for saying yes or no is that, can it be enforced? And I'm very concerned that it can't be enforced in the way that it should be. And then thirdly, I think we're trying to solve a problem in the specific case of the Minnesota Boulevard location that doesn't belong in this conversation at all, because the reason they can't make it work there are other reasons that are more culpable. First one being, goods are expensive now, tariffs make them worse. Like, that's not something we have control over. Secondly, interest rates are high. This current administration's fiscal policies are making that more challenging for everyone who's trying to borrow money. We see that affecting things like our good friends at the Mall of America trying to make a water park, for example, and it's been going on for like a long time, right? And by the way, I think everybody in this room who is advocating for workers here would also like to see that project happen, because it's a prevailing wage earning job set, right? But it's causing them problems. The third thing is the site is gross. If it's gross, we should have been cleaning it up a long time ago. Like, I don't understand why we're waiting for somebody to come and try to build on something to take care of something that sounds really terrible. And if we can get if we can get the city of Edina, who's our neighbor right there, to help us out, and we can get state and federal environmental dollars to clean it up, we could solve that problem and maybe potentially have solved that problem 3 times ago when people were trying to build on it, so that that wouldn't even be a consideration, and we could get a prevailing wage or working contractor here. So I can't find a test for which I can vote yes to these policy changes. The administrative changes I'm completely fine with, but on the policy changes, I don't see it working, and I don't see as much as I desperately want housing to be made in this city. I don't think that we can put these two against each other. I think there's other levels in this particular case that's in front of us as the example. And I think in the case of these other things, I would say if we wanted to do something creative around our opportunity housing ordinance to get at that really deeply affordable 30% AMI, I'd be open to a discussion about stuff like that. But that's not what we're talking about here, and I think this overarching policy changes are not going to work for us. So I just share my comments, I try to do the math, and give you the reasons for why I'm not going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Lohman.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Alessandra. Very succinct the way you went at that. Well, I think you were clear. I think you were very clear. That'll give you. And I think you were very clear with a very complex topic and succinct in that manner. So what I'll say, Mayor, is, I think, when I look at this, I get it. There's a development issue here, and we've, both of us have seen this site, basically not have anything done with it, and we run a real risk here of not, not getting anything done, and I get that, so personally, as a council member, I think I'd like to separate that out from this, because I think I think we've got to be serious about that. We need to figure out what it's going to take to get that over the finish line. And I think that's an important process that we need to figure out how to do that. Now, I agree with many of the things that have been stated here, that I'm just not able to make that finding with regards to we need to have a waiver to get this thing done. But I do think something needs to be done. If we go with what we've got today, they're telling us they're not going to do it, and I don't find that acceptable to get that done. So what I would hope that we could do after this, after we make our decision around this, is to take that out and have a conversation to, in all due speed, get that resolved before the end of August. And I know that's a priority here. So, staff has kind of brought forward the model as we look through these other 5 items here, and I'll try to move quickly through these things here. And the model was we're going to use St. Paul's example. Well, St. Paul does not have, a waiver process. St. Paul, so you can't, I don't think, from a staffing standpoint, as we're putting this forward, we can't have it kind of both ways. I think we got to decide, are we going to make our own policies and kind of, maybe we'll do a waiver, maybe we'll, look to do rulemaking. Well, the rulemaking, isn't in the St. Paul thing, and I'm fine, but I think we've got to decide which way we want to go. And I'm very concerned, Mayor, in terms of this process, for those folks who originally brought this before us the first time, that they weren't included in this conversation. And so I want the best experts to be at the table to help us craft the best ordinance that I think that we had. And I am the type of person where, hey, you bring it before me, what can we do to make it better? So today, I am not, looking to try to support this in its current construction. But I do think that there is a necessary dialogue that needs to happen between staff and many of these fine folks who are here, and also with our development community, because we can't get to a situation where, one, we can't do the prevailing wage, and we've got to make these exemptions. That makes no sense to me at all. We've got to get past that. So let me just tick through these things here. So in terms of the housing with the Davis-Bacon law, I do think that's critically important that we have that conversation about that. We've got cities like Minneapolis that are doing some things out there. There are other cities across the country that are really working to try to make sure that those small businesses can be able to handle the administrative burdens that are out there. And I think that we ought to have that conversation with our labor folks to figure out if there's a way for us to get that prevailing wage process to work from an administrative standpoint. When we look to clarify pass-through funds, I assume that, with the conduit bonds, that's an obvious no-brainer. I would be able to pass that tonight. That's kind of a no-brainer. I think when we bring this back to have that conversation, I'm willing to go down that route. Rulemaking, I'm confused. St. Paul doesn't have it. Yeah, they say they want to have it, but that's our model. So no, I can't support that tonight. In terms of the exemption around the prevailing wage, I haven't seen a unique situation that meets that standard where I'd want to pay people under the amount that they deserve to be paid. And then finally, when we look at the 20 units or less, I do want prevailing wage to be a part of that. If we say that we support being a city that people want to be, you can't afford to be here if you can't pay at least a livable wage. And so for those reasons, I cannot support this the way that this is currently constructed today, with the caveat, Mayor, of that we really need to do something with that property. I don't want us to lose sight of that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Moat.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the insight from both of my council members. And for me, I think about it a little differently. I think everybody knows I have 3 young boys, and I'm trying to raise them to be generous and thoughtful men when they grow up. And something that we talk about a lot is that we stick to our word, because what you stand for matters, especially in today's day and age where people flip-flop, and that's okay. And we've told them that's okay. But to me, sticking to your word means a great deal, because what you stand for matters. And then secondly, we just had this experience this last weekend when we had some friends cancel on us for the 4th time. And sticking to your word means that you're reliable. That when people show up, they know that you're going to do what you say, that you're going to continue to follow through, that you aren't someone who will back down because it gets hard. And I went back and looked at our meeting minutes from last year, and this motion passed not 4-3, not 5-2, it was 7-0. We passed this motion 7-0 because we said this is important to Bloomington, because we said this is a value that we have. And when I look at the example, to me, it's half-baked. In the year that we've had it, we haven't had any full projects come through that required us to dig deep and make sure that what we did worked. This is a half-baked example that could be. And we mentioned when you're asking your questions, Councilmember Lohman, about are there other opportunities, there are other options, there are levers that we can pull? And the answer was yes, and we just haven't explored that. And so for us to rescind and go back on what we said we're going to do not only leaves the workers who call Bloomington home in a bind because they don't know what we're going to do next, but it leaves the developers who we want to continue to work with in a bind as well. And so as we look to continue to focus our development and make sure that Bloomington is very strategic in our growth, I believe we should continue to stick to what we have until we have full projects that we have vetted, gone through the whole process and made sure that we've done as much as we can, and it's still not enough, then let's have that conversation. But until we do, I'm not ready to make these major changes. I understand the administrative changes, and I support that to make sure that our staff can continue to support the developing community. But as far as the other ones where we're having waivers and we're having exemptions, that's not something I can get behind today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Moot. Councilmember Nelson, and then Councilmember Rivas. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you, Mayor. As many of those in the room may recall, I was probably the most apprehensive council member with regards to this policy. With that said, I'm not seeing a lot of necessity to make the major changes in this, maybe a couple of those minor ones, for the reasons that have already been articulated. I also would like to echo some of the comments that I heard that are many of the folks in this room were surprised by this at maybe 6 days notice of something on Facebook. I spent part of, with all due respect and apologies, during the presentation, reading a lengthy letter from someone with very detailed information that I had not received previously. It may have come late in the day by email, and then I may have missed it, but I apologize about that. I did get one the other letter by email and had been able to read it beforehand. And so I frankly feel unprepared to move forward, and also after everything I've heard and seen, unconvinced of the need to make the major changes. With regards to the 20 units and the 8 units, I'm still skeptical that those projects are going to have city funding. You know, I mean, so it's not going to apply, right? I mean, it's private project. You do that. I mean, the reality is, you know, I mean, if there was not soil remediation requiring TIF, this project would not be prevailing wage. And that may be a different challenge that the city faces. But because they need that TIF money to remediate that soil, then prevailing wage kicks in. And so, I mean, if there are other opportunities throughout the city, I mean, I hope our whole city doesn't have site conditions like this one does, and we've known that for a long time. Like Councilmember Lohman said, this has been something that I remember former colleague Jack Beloga wanted to take care of before he retired, and was unfortunately unsuccessful in getting that property developed. It was a personal passion of his, I know. So I forget, I don't have the 3 things in front of me. I think Councilmember Lohman stated them, that there's a couple of those that I'd be fine with. The 8 units, I don't know that we need to, because I just really don't know that it's ever going to apply to projects that much. And the rulemaking, I'm actually okay with that one. So giving authority to do that instead of having to come back, I can understand, and partially, maybe I'm completely misunderstanding the Supreme Court ruling, but you know, they went in and said departments don't have rulemaking authority, and so they scrapped a bunch of rules at the federal level because that wasn't explicitly granted to departments. And so to not give that, and to make sure that we're solidly behind that, makes sense in my mind. And the other one about, yeah, I support the other one. so that's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Rivas.
I just have a quick comment, and is on regards to the ordinance proposal to give staff the authority to create administrative rules. I have a problem with that, as you all know. There is no, there are no ways of council keeping an eye on that that could lead to an abuse of a prevailing wage in the future. So, everything else I kind of agree with, but my motivation to not support this is actually giving the staff the authority to create rules that we couldn't control ourselves. And when it came to us, it would probably be too late. The damage could have been done to the prevailing wage, and so that's the main thing. I don't support this thing itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Well, I can see which way the wind is blowing here, and I can't say that I disagree with any of the comments that have been made. I will say, when we had the study session on this, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever it was, my sentiment was, as we came away with that, was we were all in agreement. We wanted to protect workers and make sure that our workers in Bloomington were protected, but we also were looking for options, flexibility, some way to make sure that we didn't impede development in some way. And I think when we stated that, and when we got to the end of that study session and we sent it forth with staff, my hope was that perhaps they would come back with something that had the input of labor, the input of the people affected by this, and we could have perhaps found a compromise, found a way to make this work, found a creative solution to it all. And unfortunately, I don't think we are there with that. And I would echo what others have said. I'm disappointed that we hear from people that this was news to them. This was a surprise. That shouldn't happen, not something on this large and this impactful in a lot of ways. And so I agree that we probably aren't there on this. This isn't going to work for us, and if we want to do the administrative and not the policy, however we want to do it. But I think the biggest takeaway for me is on issues like this, we just really absolutely have to make that very specific and intentional outreach and discussion and commitment with people to have this conversation. Because if not, then we end up in a position like this, where we pass it a year ago, 8 weeks ago we have the conversation, and then tonight we realize we're not quite there. And it's disappointing to me that we're at this point. So with that, Council, I think we have an idea where we are, and I see Councilmember D'Alessandro's hand up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy if it's what the council would like to vote on is to make the motion with the exemptions that were provided so that we could pass the administrative changes without the policy changes. That's what I'd like to put forth as a motion, if that's acceptable to everyone, and we could vote on that as a starting place.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. I think
you can vote no.
The other piece that we don't have agreement with is the rulemaking piece. So I think we could probably pass 1 and 2, but
you could vote no on it if you wanted to, and it might pass 4-2. We don't know, right?
So
I just maybe it would be helpful. I think that we might be being confused about what the word rulemaking means in this case, and we did pass rulemaking capabilities for our earn sick and safe time ordinance, and so we've given these rules before. I'm confused, frankly, Mr. Mayor. Maybe we should have that discussion. I don't know. Are we not clear on what rulemaking means in this particular capacity?
Are you asking me directly?
I'm asking if we should talk about that as a council, just maybe before we make this vote. Oh, I don't know.
Councilmember Lohman, something to add to this?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. I think that in terms of the rulemaking piece, I think what staff has brought forward is really the model for this prevailing wage is St. Paul, and it doesn't have it in there. So that's part of my issue. And then on top of that, my rationale as to why I can't support this is that the conversation, even about this administrative stuff, there was no dialogue. So I think that we would be best serviced to really just table really all of this stuff and make sure that we have the proper feedback. I think really the only one that I am prepared today is item number 2, which is to clarify that pass-through funds and conduit bonds are exempt from the ordinance. That totally makes sense to me. I can't think there's any reason why we would ever want to get our stuff mixed up with that. But the rest of those things, I think there's some, I mean, I've heard that from, that they just weren't prepared to have this conversation. I want to make sure that even at these administrative levels, even though we did do it in Earn Sick and Save, but they say that, staff said the model is St. Paul. They don't have it. So I want to make sure that we're getting clearly, what we're doing there. So I mean, at this point, I can't support any of this other than that item number 2. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's have Councilmember Nelson, and then we'll. Councilmember Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd be supportive of Councilmember Lohman's proposal to table and have further discussions because I'd go one step further than he did. And what I heard from folks who testified today is that they're willing to step up and work with the city, with the development community to find better ways to bring affordable housing projects into our community and to move a project forward, that they're prepared to have those conversations and make it work. And so I would hate to just say, this didn't work and walk away and not have that conversation when we have willing partners. And I know there's a development community out there that wants to build. That's what they do. So let's have those conversations and see what we can do. And I think to Councilmember D'Alessandro's point, that, maybe that'll help us get something done on this property. I mean, we can't lose focus of that we want something done there at that property, whatever you want to call it. So
am I understanding you, Councilmember, you're in favor of the administrative amendments, but not the policy amendments? Did I sum that up, or you want to continue the discussion on all of it? Okay. Councilmember D'Alessandro, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm not going to make that motion,
okay,
but somebody else can, and I'll vote on it.
Councilmember, you were ready to make a motion. Why don't you make the motion you were ready to make?
Okay. Can somebody please put up the note back up on the thing that gives me those exemption numbers, because I don't have them off the top of my head and I can't find them in the.
They're not in the packet.
In the packet. No, they're just going to put it up on the screen for me. Yeah, it was in there. We saw it originally. We just don't have it up there. So I don't. No, it's fine. Thanks. Here we go. I got it right here. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion approving ordinance amending prevailing wage definitions and exemptions, thereby amending Chapter 23 of the City Code, except for 23.36D, which exempts housing projects up to 20 units, and except 23.36C, allowing the ability to approve a waiver under required conditions, which I believe covers the administrative provisions.
We have a motion by Councilmember D'Alessandro, a second by Councilmember Mua. So basically what we have, what the motion is, Council, is to approve the administrative amendments, but to turn down the policy amendments. Councilmember Nelson, question?
Yeah, would this still allow staff and those interested to talk about the Davis-Bacon 8-unit thing and come back with resolution of that? Because I did hear that as a concern of people. If we pass that, I think that would, I would hope that would be part of the conversation then.
I think if we approve this as it's been moved, then it will exempt housing projects under 8 units. Then in no way closes the door for continued discussion on anything.
Because we can change it back later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion and the second? Any additional questions or comments on this? Councilmember Lohman?
Well, I think Councilmember Nelson has really put this forth. I mean, it's disturbing to me that with the administrative portions of this, that we don't even want to have a dialogue with our best partners and champions of this particular issue. So I mean, I get it, but once you pass it, that's what it is. So I would strongly advise my colleagues, not to support this. I think that we really ought to have a dialogue and really bring this forward. I think this will create a situation that will not be good. I'm really hoping that we could just kind of table it today. I think really the focus of this really ought to be on the development portions of this. Maybe look to try to solve that and then come back. What's to stop us from coming back a couple weeks after they have the conversation dialogue? So I will not be supporting this as written.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, we oftentimes provide administrative support to our staff without needing to do the full gamut of our, everything from advise to inform structure here. I worry about the precedent we're setting here. I have heard from my constituents who represent both labor interests and also residential interests, and never in the conversation I've had over the past 2 weeks have these administrative policies been at issue. It's been always the policy decisions. And so I'm nervous that we are putting in precedent a place where every single tiny thing that we want to do as a city has to go through public discourse. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. It's always out there for the public. It's always out there to be seen. And people can come to listening sessions and they can provide comment to us via email and everything else. But not everything has to go through that process. And unless I'm wrong and I'm completely misunderstanding, these administrative rules are not the critical pieces here. And that's why they're comfortable for me to pass. Now, that doesn't mean we can't continue to talk about them, but I'm confused. I don't, if I may, I just want to be careful that we're not making the statement, which I think I heard, and maybe I'm just a little sensitive to it, that somehow I don't care about or that some of us don't care about the way people think about this, because I'm trying to find a compromise that allows our city staff to continue to move certain things forward. I have no idea what other projects might be in front of planning, in front of city administration and things like that could be served by passing these administrative rules today. I don't know what they are. They don't come to us like that. And to suggest that we should know all the things and that the entire public should know all the things all the time before we give our city staff the ability to do their job, I think it's unfair to say that that's what I'm doing in this particular case. And maybe I'm taking it personally, like I said. All that having been said, we could take the vote, everybody can vote it down, and then we'll be exactly where you want to be, so that will work.
We have a motion and a second on the table. And folks understand basically the way the motion was stated. I'm not going to try and restate it, but the way the motion was stated, it would approve the administrative amendments as proposed and would deny the policy amendments as proposed. Everybody clear on that? No further council discussion on this? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion fails on a 3-3 with Nelson, Lohman, and Rivas in opposition. So does somebody have another motion to offer this evening? Councilmember Lohman.
So, Mayor, I'd like to have us move to table these items to a date. I'm not sure what would be an appropriate amount of time to get this done. Can we put this sometime in September or middle of October? I don't have a calendar in front of me. Can we do the last regular meeting in October?
I think so, anytime in August. You mentioned August earlier, and that is not going to happen. I'm confident of that.
I'm thinking October is what I'm thinking.
October or that. Yeah, I don't know that we officially need an end date.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need an end date. I mean, as long as we're okay, I mean, essentially I'd be moving to postpone this indefinitely. And we could just bring it back up when it makes sense. So I would move to postpone it indefinitely. And then I would also look at my motion to direct staff to bring back as soon as possible alternatives to help our development community resolve this issue with the with the mitigation for that property.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lohman to table this indefinitely and continue the discussion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Rivas. Council discussion on this? All those in favor of Councilmember Lohman's motion to table, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries 4-2 with Councilmember D'Alessandro and Bussey in opposition. So we have tabled it. All right. Thank you for the conversation, Council. Thank you all for being part of this conversation as well. The conversation, I guess, is going to continue. So looking forward to your input and more spreadsheets. More spreadsheets. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 5, our organizational business. And I do want to point out that we are at 8:08 right now. And this is another meaty discussion. This is an update on the Community Health and Wellness Center, which is at 50% design development right now. We will call forward our cadre of experts on this one. Thank you all for your patience. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Good to be back in front of you. I'm Dakota Kenyon, the Community Health and Wellness Center Manager. Can wait just a second here. Thanks for the opportunity to step back in front of you and provide an update on the Community Health and Wellness Center project. The last time we provided an update, we had reached the 100% completion phase of the schematic design. And since then, the project team has continued to refine the design. Tonight, we're going to hear from the architectural team as they share a progress update at the 50% design development milestone. No formal action is being requested this evening. The purpose of tonight's presentation is simply to keep everyone informed on the project's progress. We're joined tonight by Carolyn Wolf, project manager with Tegra, Monty Hillman with the Sustainable Investment Group, Aaron Mullins, the design principal, and Tim Guyette, senior project manager with HGA. They're going to walk us through the current design development work and conclude with an overview of the next steps on the project timeline. So with that, I'll turn it over to HGA. Thank you.
Thank you much. Welcome, Team HGA. Thanks for your work on this. Thanks for being with us here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council.
Oops, wrong way. My apologies.
All right, so like all meetings that we present this project, we really want to start with the project charter just to ensure that we are being consistent with the vision and the guiding principles that we started the project with. And as you'll see, this is very consistent to the slides that we have shown before. with this identification of the scope and the program elements that are in the project, as well as sustainability goals, equity goals, the current milestone schedule, and our current budget, which has been consistent since the referendum. As far as the sustainability update, we are happy to report that as designed, the project is really going to be achieving LEED Silver, or until the audits are done. That is our target, and we feel that we have enough comfortable points to be able to achieve LEED Silver with the 55 out of 110 points. And the graph on the left-hand side kind of shows you how those points stack up to the total available points in each of the categories. So, our overall process timeline, as was stated, this is the 50% DD milestone. We like to take this as an update just to make sure that everybody is informed as the process has been moving forward. We will be finishing the design development phase at the end of the month in August here. And so the project is quickly moving towards construction in the fourth quarter of this year.
All right, thank you, Tim. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for having us. I'm going to walk through the site plan, some renderings that we have in the floor plans, and give you all an update as to where the project stands or stood at 50% design development. This is an image of the site plan that all of you, I think, have seen previously. Some of the major elements on the site plan are the building, the parking that supports it to the south, as well as stormwater management that's on grade that surrounds the building, primarily some big stormwater retention areas on the 98th Street side, or the north side of this plan. And then on the south side is the main entry plaza and pavilion that greets visitors to the facility.
If you go back one slide. Over the last month, there have been ongoing discussions with Hennepin County and access on Penn Avenue. And the graphic you see here is a little bit different than the graphic that was shown at 100% schematic design. Based on the parking report and traffic study that was done, a connection between the east and west parking lots was recommended by Bolton and Menk, and that is what is shown here on the site. Through these discussions with Hennepin County, they are not supporting a connection to Penn Avenue at Jones Place. And so the current direction is a little bit different as we sit here today, as the east-west connection will go directly to Penn Avenue, and there will be one access off of Penn Avenue. The south access off Ivy Lane will be converted just to serve Presbyterian homes, and the north connection near Jones will be entirely eliminated.
Thanks, Tim. So as we hone in on the landscape and site design directly around the facility, on the left are some images of what those environments around the building will be like. So we're working really hard with our landscape design team, as well as our civil engineering team on stormwater management and making sure that we have adequate tree coverage in the parking areas that we have. The entry area, which is number 2 on the plan, is a space that's an outdoor space for the public to use, as well as a covered canopy for the facility. Number 3 illustrates the stormwater basins. So the space between the north side of the building and 98th Street will be essentially native plantings and stormwater management fronting the street. And then the fitness trail loop is about a quarter-mile loop that runs around the building, connecting with the adjacent sidewalks, as well as providing a fitness activity space around the building. So as we move into the floor plans, the major kind of building blocks of the plan are similar to what we've seen in the past. The north block of the building, the blue and the orange, represent the natatorium with a 5-lane lap pool, lifestyle and wellness pool, a spa, as well as a slide. In the orange are the gymnasiums. We have 2 gymnasiums that are divisible with a curtain to be configurable for all sorts of different sports. As we've seen in the past, we have site space allocated for future expansion of a 3rd gym. Moving to the south of what we call the member concourse, the main north or east-west connector, in the dark purple or indigo, I guess, is the indoor play space. And just below that is the event space and multipurpose rooms. These rooms we'll see in one of the renderings come up, but are divisible into 3 program-specific rooms to support the community, and also it can be opened up to support 200 guests for events. In the center is the entry pavilion and canopy space with the lobby just north of that. So essentially the landscape of the plaza is coming into the building to become the lobby as well. And off to the left of that, the dark red to the left, are 3 additional community rooms supporting programming. To the left of that, in the pink and purple, is the public health and WIC portion of the building. And then the green off of the lobby are the Parks and Rec offices for supporting this facility. Moving up to the second floor is devoted wholly to fitness. So the dark orange on the bottom, there are 3 studio spaces for studio programming, fitness programming. In the center, the gray are changing areas and restrooms. The rest of that floor in the lighter orange is devoted to cardio and weightlifting activities. And then there's a track, it's about 12 laps to the mile, that goes around the 2 gyms. So as we're moving into some exterior renderings here and some views of the interior, I wanted to step back and kind of just talk a little bit about the palette. Given the amount of space that we have in the building, we're at about 106,000 square feet, which we've been at for a while now. The goal of the palette of the building is to be really elemental and refined, knowing that we have a lot of space to kind of enclose. And so utilizing a textured precast wood on the exterior, really looking at how we use windows and glass to both bring in light to the spaces as well as to connect patrons to the landscape outside, and then focusing on light and texture and really using the native plantings and the stormwater as another element of the palette. On the interior, it's again, I think, pretty refined and a bit subdued. We have kind of the backbone of the building, which is the polished flooring and wood flooring, as well as accent colors, different patterns of some carpeting, wood, and then other textures and acoustic treatments for the facility. So walking through some of the renderings, this is a view at the corner of 98th and Newton. Some of the massing of the building, I should have talked about this in the plans, is set up, I think, pretty sensitively to the site, where we have bigger spaces kind of pulled back from the streets, pulled back from Newton, pulled back from 98th, and then spaces that are closer, like the multipurpose room is a 1-story space. So spaces that are closer to streets like Newton are scaled down to kind of be respectful of the site and sensitive. This is a view looking east on 98th at the corner of Penn. So here you can see that walking path kind of coming around, becoming the public sidewalk, engaging with the public, and then the stormwater basins kind of in front of the building. So we're trying really hard with the landscape to kind of buffer the building and to make this into a building that is sitting into a park versus a building that we've landscaped around. So moving around to the south side, this is the main entrance of the building. I've referred to this in 2 ways, as the canopy or the entry pavilion. I think it's a really unique opportunity that we've kind of focused in on here to invite the public into the building and protect them like we would with a park pavilion. So this canopy serves to not just protect from the elements, but to also provide an outdoor space for seating that supports the cafe and other spaces in the building. Moving into the building, the lobby is a pretty generously sized lobby that can support a lot of different patrons that are coming into the facility, be it for public health or WIC, or to an event at the event center, or straight ahead you can see this view looks from the lobby into the gymnasium, so connecting patrons with the activities that are happening in the building. This is a view of that multi-purpose and event space that's on the southeast corner of the building. This is with all of the walls open. So this space seats about 200 people. And like I said before, it can be broken down into smaller spaces to support programming for programs that the community center will offer to the public. This is a view in the gymnasium. This view is unique, I think, because it looks from the gymnasium into the lobby. Tried really hard to make a lot of these cross connections, not only to the landscape, but also within the building, so different people can see different activities happening. And this is another view of the gymnasium looking northeast towards the corner, I guess, of 98th and Newton, but this shows how the track will kind of float around the inside of that building, or in the inside of that space. Again, 2 basketball courts, divisible in the center with a curtain, and able to be laid out for volleyball, pickleball, other sports. I think there's just a few left. This is a view of the cardio and fitness lobby, if you will, on the 2nd floor. So there's the main stair that comes down into the lobby. Off to the left, you get views of the running track and into the gymnasium. And off to the right, you get views down into the lobby. And then straight ahead is one of the fitness studios on this level. This is a view of the Natatorium, also looking northeast. There's ample daylight in the Natatorium, which I think will be a really nice space for both lap swimming, families to come, swimming lessons, etc.
And then as next steps. So this is the first time that you will see this project this month. Actually, I believe we'll come back on the 25th for the development review portion of this project, and I think perhaps the associated hearing would be the first meeting in September. In September, we will commence construction documents as we finish up design development in August. We'll then be able to work through the GMP with J.E. Dunn, our contracting partner, and we hope to be able to demolish Creekside, begin that work in October. The abatement work has already begun on that site. And if everything aligns, that will allow us to begin excavation and commence construction in November. And with that, I think we'll open up for questions.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the update. Council, questions or comments? Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Hi, folks. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question for you about in your renderings. What are the internal sound considerations that you're thinking about? I'm specifically thinking about what it might be like to have a yoga class happening while you have that open space to the studios and a high energy basketball game going on with young children who scream in a certain pitch. So I'm just kind of curious. I'm just curious. Can you talk a little bit about sound abatement and how you're thinking about that control?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can. So we're working with a consultant, ESI, who's an acoustic consultant, and we've had them go through all of the specific spaces and provide us with recommendations for sound abatement. So you can either absorb sound or prevent that sound from traveling. So with the yoga studios, for instance, we have acoustic ceiling tiles in those spaces. All of the walls that we have are sound insulated to varying degrees, depending upon what the activity is. And working with our structural engineer, we have mass in the proper areas to prevent that structural boron noise from coming through, or to minimize it. I will say, to your point, in a facility that has multiple loud things going on, we try to address the sound as best we can, knowing that there's a certain level of activity in a building like this that will be heard. You open a door to the gym, you'll hear the gym sounds coming through. But in all areas where we have separations of these major sound creating spaces, say the gym to this lobby here, we have a 8-inch precast concrete panel that will serve to kind of stop a lot of that sound, as well as sound absorbing materials on the walls of the gymnasium. And one additional thing is the structural deck that we have over the gymnasium, over the indoor play, has sound absorption in the ceiling itself too.
And what about the glass elements themselves? So specifically, I'm thinking about that gymnasium to the front lobby area. Maybe multiple concerns, including how easy is it to break that glass? But thinking about that as you know, are we talking about the kind of glass that we see when we do double paned windows in, you know, flight paths and things like that that really do a good job? Is that what we're thinking about here?
Yes. Yep. And the glass itself will be a tempered laminated glass. So from an impact standpoint, it will be suitable to an environment like this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
Councilmember Lohman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I overheard you say about that the Penn Avenue side is kind of out. Is that what I'm hearing, or help me understand that?
If we go
I know that this is kind of
from a site plan.
from a site plan,
from
yes.
a site plan standpoint.
So the if we go back,
We're almost there.
I know it was one of those early slides. Okay, so the
One too many.
the northernmost access aligning with Jones Place, that is not being supported by the county at all.
Okay. And so then my question then about that is that west entrance way that you have there, what do you think you'll end up doing with that?
Oh, there will be, that courtyard will be reconfigured, and there'll be we're working with the fire department to maintain emergency access and really almost create a cul-de-sac, which is very much what exists on the site right now.
Yep.
Next to the creek side. We'll have some sort of cul-de-sac so that vehicles can turn around up in that northernmost parking area. Additionally, rather than basically have the traffic go all the way down to Ivy Lane to exit the facility, we're just going to take that road and take it all the way from the east to the west, so that it basically intersects Penn between Jones and Ivy, and that will allow us to put some additional stormwater retention where that pavement is, and then we'll keep that lower access only for Presbyterian homes to use.
And then, so I see between, you know, where that access you're going to put there, there's that green space there. Has there been any thought at all in terms of mitigating on the Newton side by moving that over to the right?
That is actually the Presbyterian homes property.
I figured you were just going to say that. I was pretty sure that's what that was,
Yes,
but I wanted
yes.
to make sure that could not be moved. Okay. So then, with that being said, the Newton access exists today, right?
Correct.
So that isn't any new access that's being placed there. So just so
There is one access that is approximately where the northmost access off of Newton is. We have a southern access on Newton, twofold really, for allowing emergency vehicles to come through to service Presbyterian homes from a fire access standpoint. And so that's the natural path that they would take across the site as they do currently right now.
Okay, so those are there. And I imagine what you're going to tell me is, since we already have an existing site there, the traffic probably cannot handle, because I already heard that. And I know this is not a traffic discussion. I want to be careful not to do that. But if we were to temporarily close off the Newton piece and take everything on the Penn side and make a temporary access, you know, until we look to do expansion, is that something that's possible?
I think that's a county conversation that would need to happen between planning and county.
That's fair enough, and I'll stop right there then on that. So then, when we look on up and down Newton, what could be constructed there? Could we put a wall, a retaining wall that's a brick? How much would that cost to try to do something like that?
Well, there's a building setback requirement on Newton, so we could only get it so close to Newton. But what we have is there's a bermed landscaping structure with a series of trees and plantings along Newton to try to cut down on those headlights that would be coming out of the parking lot. Right now, we have not pursued any costing of any physical wall barrier or anything like that, and we're not even quite sure how we would be able to do something like that with the planning ordinances that exist.
I know we did something similar with the car wash. There was a concern there where a wall was built there. And I don't think that stopped the lighting from coming into the area. So I know that there are those folks that are there. I mean, those limited houses, and it probably would go into Maple. I don't know how much a wall would prevent that from going to the other block, but I think that's another question that the neighbors have around that. So. If we could look at that as a possibility in terms of, and I imagine there is no way of putting a roundabout or anything at the top of 98th Street there. It's totally not an idea that would work. So it would cut into the building.
Yeah, can I? I just would like to add one more thing to what Tim was saying along Newton. So we looked at it a little bit today relative to what exists there currently and what will exist there after this project is implemented. So currently, it's a pretty flat grade from Newton onto the site where the park is and the ball field. Currently, there are 13 trees of a variety of makes and models up and down Newton. This plan that you see up on the screen here takes those 13 trees, and we save 8 of them, and there are 5 of them that need to be removed that are in areas where we need to remove them. And we're adding an additional 38 to 40 trees to those 8. So we're going to go from 13 trees on Newton to 48 trees on Newton. Additionally, like I said, that grade is flat there right now. As Tim said, we're adding in a 3-foot tall berm. So there's a hill that will exist next to the sidewalk. And currently there are no shrubs or any ground cover along Newton. And we're adding in about 175 shrubs that will grow to 3 to 5 feet. So if you can imagine that landscape along this street there will go from an open field off of Newton to a berm that will have a planted wall essentially of about 5 to 8 feet tall. So, and I wish we had a rendering of that right now.
All right, and then just 2 really quick things, just more comments. I want to thank staff for its willingness to work with the seniors and those the boutique and all those types of things. We know that things change over time, and so where we're at, in the first year when we get this thing built, we'll be in a different place after that. So if we just be patient with staff and if this thing gets done, that would have a great situation. And then B, I also want to thank you for the putting in the site plan where the expansions would be. Thanks for so I could visually see that. Thanks.
Councilmember Rivas.
You can leave that map in there. I just have a quick question. Just because of the residents' concerns, I'm thinking of this. If you are planning on having an entrance by Ivy Lane from Penn Avenue towards this facility, would it be possible to move the parking lot to that west side of the location and eliminate the parking entrance on Newton, and still, you see all the greenery that you have in there, move it to the other side? Would that be possible at all?
Well,
and just
yes, that plot is actually part of Presbyterian Homes, and it's where they're doing their stormwater management, and so there would have to be some sort of land swap between the city and Presbyterian Homes to do anything.
You need to say no more.
Yes,
I guess I was just thinking because I looked at the map in here, and it just would make sense, right, to swap it if it were the city's property, I guess. But that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mouat.
Thank you, Mayor. One point that was brought up today, I am interested in what we're doing with lighting in the parking lot. I know there is opportunity to have directed lighting so that it minimizes as much as possible getting into the neighbors' homes. So that's something I'd be interested in us reviewing and pursuing in the parking lot, as we have to keep it lit for safety. But anything we can do to direct light, specifically away from residents, Presbyterian homes, the neighborhood, would be greatly appreciated.
Yes.
So I have a question. I'm looking at the lead scorecard.
Yes.
And on this map, on that map, I saw 5 T's, meaning transit stops, and an intersection of 2 major county roads. Why, for location and transportation, do we only score 2 of 16 possible points?
This is always a little bit of a challenge, because the location and transportation really has to do with the site that you're given. There's nothing really you can do to improve those scores, because it has to do with connections to routes, how many routes, frequency of routes, other traffic patterns, and just the network that surrounds that particular site. And so we'd love to be able to say that we can do that, but the infrastructure and MTC, we'd have to robustly improve those routes in order to get those numbers up.
Okay, I was wondering, it didn't seem to make sense, because it seems to be at least served. I don't know how well served, but it's certainly served by Metro Transit. So, Council, any additional questions, or are we ready to wrap up? Last one, Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. You reminded me, I want to make sure we're working with Met Transit to get covered bus stations there. That is something that I'm not willing to let go, especially with how much people are going to be using this place. I want everyone to be able to use this place, and covered bus stations is very important to me.
All right. Thank you much for the update.
Thank you.
And I understand we'll be seeing more of you.
Yes.
This month, and probably in the next month as well.
Very well.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, staff. Well done. Moving on, Council, in our organizational business, item 5.2, our City Council policy and issue update. And I will go through our City Council listening session. I think we had more people speak at the listening session than we've ever had speak at the listening session tonight. It was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people spoke at the listening session. We got 9 people in just like 2 minutes over a half hour, so that was pretty impressive. Masa Chold was concerned about her grandson's transfer to Jefferson, or from Jefferson to Kennedy High School after he was assaulted at the school, and asked for our help. And I know that our legal staff reached out to him and them specifically with our new victim liaison that we were introduced to today. So that was nice, and we will. We gave the advice also to speak to the school board as opposed to the city council regarding that, because that's probably the more appropriate group to be talking to. Eric Lundeen was talking about the maintenance of trees by XL Energy around power lines. He lives on, he lives by Valley View. I can't remember what he's, 99th he said. And he's lost power often during weather events. As I said, I was surprised. I thought he was going to complain about XL cutting trees back too far, but in fact he was complaining that they weren't cutting trees back enough. I know our public works staff is aware of this issue, and we'll be bringing it up with our friends at Excel to make sure that we avoid extensive problems with that. Jeffrey Cambrone spoke to us. He's a resident of the Newton Avenue neighborhood, and he spoke very well about some concerns about the traffic changes in the neighborhood, and appreciated him being there this evening. Jonathan Minks spoke in opposition to the Community Health and Wellness Center on a variety of issues. Then Brian Hemerson also spoke in opposition to the Community Health and Wellness Center. Sandy Richmond came forward and was advocating for mentors in Bloomington, especially through the Big Brothers and Big Sisters program, so it was good to hear from her. Kathy Jones spoke to us about the James Avenue City Homes project and had questions about when that was going to get going, and was going to replace the empty space and the weeds that were currently on the site. And finally, Shannon Mavis spoke in opposition to the Community Health and Wellness Center also. As I said, I think 9 people spoke this evening. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 6 of the 9 were unique speakers once again tonight. So as we keep that count, I continue to be impressed with the number of different people that we hear from at our City Council listening sessions. So thanks to everybody who spoke. The only other thing that I will bring up is what I brought up when we started the meeting, that tomorrow night is National Night Out, and I know that I believe all of you are participating. I certainly hope that you are. It's a fantastic opportunity. It's a fantastic opportunity to get out into the community and to just talk to neighbors and talk about breakneck speed. I mean, talk with 9 speakers in a half hour at the listening session is nothing compared to the 8 or 9 stops we make in 2 hours at these National Night Out parties. But it's always a fantastic evening. It's a great community builder. Thank you to our Bloomington Police Department for pulling it all together and for putting the work in. Thank you to our Bloomington Crime Prevention folks and to our fire department for helping support it as well. Nothing worse than being at one of the events and have the fire truck roll up, because then nobody cares who you are. They just want the fire truck. And it's always a fun thing. They do it's great that they participate and are part of that. So looking forward to that and looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow night. And please get out and see your neighbors and get out and have an opportunity to meet folks or reacquaint yourself or just spend some time on a nice summer evening with your neighbors. So that is what I have this evening, Council. Ms. Hadeen, I know you've got a couple of very good things to talk about as well.
Ooh, a couple. We'll go with one. But it is exciting. Our communications team, last week, they received 9 awards at this year's Minnesota Association of Government Communicators Northern Lights Ceremony, which is awesome. That's just in the middle of it. We'll just clap. Community outreach and engagement, Parks and Rec, and Public Works are recognized with an award for their engagement work on the 9 Mile Creek Restoration Project. More than 200 people attended the event that started with a keynote presentation from our very own communications administrator, Janine Hill. The Magic, which is the big long name that I just spelled out, 2024 Lifetime Achievement Award. She got to present that. And we ended with the Bloomington crew holding 3 first places, 4 second places, and 2 bronze awards. Congrats to the entire team. Thank you.
They always clean up. We have probably the best communication staff, I think, in the state of Minnesota. They do outstanding work, and they always that work is always recognized. That's not just us saying that. That's being recognized by their peers across the state of Minnesota, and for that matter, nationally. And well done to them, and congrats to them. Council, anything else to bring forward this evening? Councilmember Lohman and Councilmember D'Alessandro, how come I'm surprised that you two are the ones to bring?
We're just worried.
Councilmember Lohman.
Well, first of all, I want to start off by just saying that during our conversation with the prevailing wage portion, Councilmember D'Alessandro, I just want to be sure that that none of my comments were meant to be personal of any nature at all. It's strictly about the policy itself. So I just want to be sure that if you heard my statements that way, that I apologize to you. That's not what was meant by my statements at all. I wanted to mention that it's timely. I had a conversation over the weekend, and I mentioned this to the mayor over the weekend, of the unfortunate events that happened at Nativity of Mary. There was a robbery that took place there, and I just find it just sorry to hear that happened to that congregation, and really any of our religious institutions when they're attacked in that manner. It brings and highlights the importance of National Night Out and the hard work that our police force has done. And I know they've been over there and they're having that conversation. One of the things that was mentioned to me is that it was not at all mentioned in our newspaper, according to them. I hadn't, maybe that just had happened and they hadn't had a chance to publish it. So, and certainly when we're having that conversation later on, I'll want to look back at that. But hope we get those things figured out. And then finally, I just want to mention that, obviously during our listening session, I certainly fielded a number of calls around our community center and just some disturbing things that I've kind of heard that are really not factually based. This idea that our health department is free of charge paying for Richfield's health department. That's totally false. That is not the case at all. We are getting money, from Richfield and from Edina to kind of carry out our health type needs. We have a program that's been around, for decades in the city, to really highlight what we were able to do for our entire community and for those folks who are most vulnerable. And when you look at the building in which that our health department was in, it just was really just not of the dignity of the making of that particular place. And so by moving that whole department to another location, I think it really talks about, our entire mission of being in a place where people want to be. And the same thing could be said for the largest demographic in the community center. That community center has been a problem for years, and we tried to replace it with another site in Valley View. That didn't work out, and we decided to make that shift. It was difficult to cast that vote because I was a big proponent of the Valley View area, but I had determined and looked at it and said, hey, you know what, we're at a point now, Mayor, that we can't do this anymore. And so I said, hey, I'm going to go ahead and cast the vote to change this. It was painful. I thought it was the better site because it was larger, and now we're at not what was my first site or my second, third, or fourth, fifth site. Now we're at the Creekside area, and we know it's a smaller site. And I think, this staff and this council has worked hard to be able to try to look at the concerns that those residents have, and we're going to continue to try to do that, to try to find the best way to kind of move forward with that. And I think we've got some work to do on that. But I am very hopeful that we will be able to find a solution to those issues and try to mitigate as much as we possibly can. Now, I know that there are those folks who, no matter what we do, will not find anything that we do helpful there or their willingness to be able to support that. And, as a Rotarian, I understand the importance of the four-way test. The truth is that a majority of voters in the city of Bloomington voted for that site. Now, granted, the next part of it, what did it look exactly the way that we had intended to look that way? No, not necessarily. That was the criticism that we had with the Valley View, was that we had a plan already and we're ready to roll this thing out. Is it beneficial to all concerned? Getting all the way to the end of that. Yeah, it is beneficial to all concerned. Even if you're there and living in that neighborhood, everyone can take advantage of that particular site. And I could go on and on, but I just think that we really need to just take a step back for a moment here and realize how much money we've spent on the community center and how much that has cost this community, and to simply shut it down and not move forward and not have a conversation. And we need to be careful about those folks who live there in that neighborhood, I think is short-sighted. So I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation and looking to see what ways that we can be able to overcome the obstacles that those folks that live closest to that neighborhood are facing. And it's my true passion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember D'Alessandro.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had two things. The first one was I just wanted to kind of double down a little bit on the listening session topics around our trees, and specifically the trees that are in the easements. As I mentioned at that time, I've heard from 2 or 3 other residents just in the past week about their frustrations around this. I don't know the frustration that I didn't hear tonight, but that I've heard on the phone, is that there's a runaround that happens. There's a pointing of fingers, right? Excel says it's your problem. The city says it's Excel's problem. It's like, this constant thing. I don't know if our forestry master plan is going to help us or not, but I would, and I've said this to staff already, I cannot wait for that thing to actually be in front of us so we can understand how it is going to help us manage our tree challenges. It just feels like it's even more and more and more of a priority for us, and it's taking a long time. And I'm not trying to belittle the fine work that's being done, but the sooner we can get our hands around this, the better off we're going to be on multiple fronts. I cannot imagine us sitting here and one more year without hearing about something truly devastating happening because these trees are not being managed effectively. And I understand it takes a cooperation. It takes everybody to do their part. I had to take down my ash tree. I didn't like doing it. I did, right? We all have to do it. But when they're in these liminal spaces between things, ultimately, Excel has an obligation to, I feel like I'm ranting at Excel lately. Excel has an obligation to provide service to this community, and this is why this whole thing around their right-of-way access and everything is something we just give them. But they have to do their job. And I don't know what we can do as a city, but call them in front of us and say, what in the world? Or something to get them to actually take that seriously. But it's an important piece of the puzzle that I think we're leaving it up to environmental health to kind of deal with on a case by case when we know it's a systematic citywide problem. So that's my first comment. Second comment is related, which is, as a result of our vote tonight, we need to figure out what we need to move out in order for them to have the time and energy to bring that back to us after all that discussion. We always do this to our staff. We tell them, no, go back and do it again, but we never provide them with the room to do that. So I'm curious about what it is we're going to have to give up in order to get that conversation back in front of us sometime in September or October. So I think we should really think through that and make a decision. Maybe we don't bring it back until next year. Maybe we put it on the work plan for 2026 or something else. And we all live with the consequences of not being able to move certain development items forward because of that. But we don't ever talk about that. We just say, bring it back, and I don't know what is going to get moved. So if we could ask staff to tell us, what do they have to move out of the way that they currently have in their work plan to make room for this, so we can help make a decision about that. I think that would be prudent. Thank you.
I agree with you, Councilmember, and I think maybe the correct way to say it, rather than what is the best time for staff, given the priorities and the work that they've already got going on. You're right. It might be after the new year. It might be part of the 26 work plan. But I would ask them to give us some advice on that.
Yeah, and I mean it to say, I want them to feel empowered, not to feel like they have to bring it back because we did this tonight, if they can't bring it back without cutting something else to do it.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thanks, Mayor. I just echo the comments about the trees in Excel. I had lost power enough times last year that they sent me money.
They didn't take care of your tree, though, did they?
Apparently it's not in my yard, just the same thing they told him. Well, that tree's not in your yard, so you can't call it in. I didn't understand that. Apparently there's a policy. If you lose for over a certain amount of time or a certain number of times, that they have to pay you. So I got paid. And it's very convenient for me because for some reason, my side of the street and the opposite side of the street are on different parts of the grid. And so my neighbor and I just have an understanding. We run a cord across the street. So when the power goes out.
In 2025, that's how we're solving it.
Yeah, it works great. But what I actually want to bring up is there was a bunch of information within the packet regarding the Community Health and Wellness Center, whole studies and things like that. And I just didn't want anybody to feel like we just skipped that and let's not talk about that. That is part of the August 25th conversation, correct? So we have that information, it's out there, but that will be and hopefully kind of maybe refined by the information that they have about Penn Avenue. So just want to clarify that for people if they see that that information was there and that we didn't talk extensively about it.
That's a good point, Councilmember. Thank you for bringing that up. Council, anything else? We have reached the end of our agenda. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilmember D'Alessandro, second by Councilmember Mua to adjourn this evening. No further council discussion on this. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 6-0. Council, thank you much for the discussion this evening. Thanks to all of our visitors who were here this evening and provided a good input both in the listening session and at the meeting itself. Thanks to staff. Everybody have a great Tuesday. Enjoy National Night Out.